Good morning. It is March 16th, 2026. Welcome to Collision Coffee Talk. Hopefully going to get your week started off right. Lots of thinking to do today on this episode. So we're going to talk about some things I wish some techs would do. We're going to talk about some of the new dangers in using AI, like chat features, whether it's Chat GPT, Grok, Gemini. We're going to specifically talk about Gemini a little bit and what it's doing with consumers. We're going to go through that, what that means for collision shops. Driven Brands is now in a death spiral, according to one of the journalistic outlets or one of the outlets out there. So we'll go through that. And just when you think it can't get worse, but wait, there's more, right? We're gonna do a new feature within Coffee Talk called the Claims Committee. Claims Committee was one of the things that I really liked back in claims, being an adjuster, was originally presenting in a claims committee and then being part of the panel in a claims committee. I think we probably need to bring that back. So we're gonna go through a mock one today. We're gonna talk about what charging the customer really means. More and more shops, I think a lot of people in this industry, you sit back and you watch things happen to other people and you go, that's not me. That's never going to be me. We don't do that. We get along great with insurance companies in our shop. And then as time has gone by, even those of you that 3 or 4 years ago thought everything was great, now it's not so great, is it? And so you see more and more people posting, hey, I need a solution for this problem and I don't want to charge the customer. We're going to talk about why you charge the customer, that it really is the important part of the solution. There's a new Stampede for your money. Anytime there's an economic turn down, there's going to be a bunch of people jump in and come to the table, and all they want is your money. And we're going to talk about some of that today. An update on the Collision Collective. So what's going on with that? It's been a few weeks before we've given somebody an update, and then I'm going to talk about some of the things that are going to be happening soon. I'm going to talk about the WIN conference that'll be coming up in Tucson, Arizona. So we got a lot to talk about. Let's just kick it off. I was going through over the weekend. I was going back through our YouTube channel, and we've had a YouTube channel for 18 years. And I think some people, you kind of forget how long, and I have too, I've forgotten how long I've actually been doing this and not been doing other things. And then you always see new influencers and new people kind of come to the industry, come to the market, so to speak. And sometimes you don't know the history of what's come before you, and so you kind of think I'm the only one that's ever decided to start a YouTube channel and be supportive of whatever. I'm like, no, 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 there's a bunch of you or whatever. But anyway, I was going through the YouTube channel and I found this video. It's 15 years old, and I love this video because we talked a little bit about this in an episode months and months ago. Toby Chess had put out an updated aftermarket parts article and had some really good stuff in it. And I was sharing then that for those of you that don't know the history of what, Toby had gotten in trouble at a CIC for basically bringing a Sawzall to the meeting and cutting apart OEM versus aftermarket parts. Like, we could do Rockwell hardness test and we could do all of these things. But one of the things that we can definitely do is we can let's forget all the scientific testing of a Rockwell hardness. Let's just pull out a Sawzall and go to town on this vehicle or on this part, and we'll see what it does, right? So after Toby sort of got in trouble with it at CIC, and LKQ and their attorneys had a little bit of a fit, a little temper tantrum, Ford Motor Company made this video. And they had a couple of the Ford collision engineers in there. One of the gentlemen featured in here is Larry Cohen, and he just announced this, and within a couple of months ago, he's retired from Ford Motor now, which made me also kind of think about this. But Ford actually went and got some parts, and they did the same thing, Sawzall, and just cut parts in half. And they did some crash testing and some other things. This video is 15 years old, basically showing the difference between aftermarket and OEM parts. And so we've talked throughout, God, a long time about how frustrated I am with some of the technicians in this industry that want to be insta famous. And they want to show off their skills, or they want to try to get a following or whatever it is. And a lot of what they're putting out there is not proper repair procedures. And we've had insurance companies use those videos, try to submit them as court evidence. We've had them send them to customers. I have a long list of emails where insurance adjusters have forwarded YouTube videos to customers saying, see, it can be done, your shop's lying to you. And that's really hard to counter negotiate with when that happens. So technicians, those of you out there that want to be insta famous, or that you already have an Instagram or a TikTok or a whatever it is that you're doing, how about you do some of this? How about it not just be Ford Motor Company? If you're mad about having to do used parts or aftermarket parts or any of that, how about you make some videos like Ford did 15 years ago where you're showing what's wrong with these parts? I occasionally, once in a blue moon, I'll find a shop owner making a video that's on their shop account. But for the most part, it'd be way more powerful because some of you have really good view counts. You have good followings, you have good audiences, you have your peers in the industry watching you, you have people outside the industry watching you. Use that for good. Like make a video about the really terrible used parts. Like if you work at a shop that's allowing, for God knows why, to order used parts and they come in and they look like somebody dragged it to your shop behind the truck instead of put it on the truck. Make videos of that. Point that stuff out. Put it out there. Show, because when we go and we're trying to make rebuttals or we're prepping for something, there's not a whole lot out there. I have to go back and grab a video from 15 years ago, and it would be nice if you want to make a difference in this industry, if you're a technician or a painter or anybody, and you're making videos out there, stop doing the damn glue pull videos where you're taking something that's crushed and thinking that that's showing off your skill set or whatever. Make something useful. Make something that helps better the industry. Make something that can counteract all of the myths or misconceptions that maybe insurance company adjusters have about our industry and how repair works. But do it for the good. This video is still on our YouTube. I think other people have that video on their YouTube as well. And there's also, I'm going to share a little bit later on, probably later on in the week, there's a video from Volkswagen where they actually do a B pillar repair per the procedures, and then crash test the car. And then they bring the same car in, or well, same make and model, and then they do a B pillar OE parts both time. And then the second time they do the B pillar, they do it with the old procedure. So they made they crash tested vehicles to prove why when an OE makes an update, either the procedure itself updates or there's a smallish kind of update for a model year. Like you're looking at this Passat and you're thinking, same car, right? I can tell you how many times we look at a Toyota Camry and we're like, damn, that car hasn't changed in 10 years. But Volkswagen was trying to make the point of just a small change. It's still an OE part. We still did the right tools and equipment. We did all the weld testing, but just the change of not performing that procedure per the updated repair, the car failed the second crash test. And that's one of these really powerful videos that's out there where we're actually a side impact crash test. Typically, if we do anything, you get to see us running a car into the wall. That video is 12 years old. I wish the OEs would have continued to do that. A lot of pressures on them. But I'm just throwing down the gauntlet for those of you that are out there on the shop floor. Before you make another useless ticky-tock, as I like to call them, that are that just are the hey, look at me. Make something that can make this industry better. Like make it, makes your paycheck better. Why wouldn't you want to do that, right? You're gonna get a better more money if people were actually paying you guys to do these things the right way. So, all right, let's talk about the death spiral. Okay, this one cracked me up. So, I talked Monday on Coffee Talk last Monday that we had thought we were going to get Carstar's updated financials. As I've gone through this and read a whole lot more, it doesn't appear as though we'll get anything from them until maybe the end of the month. It looks like there was a 15 that extension was only supposed to be a 15-day extension when they asked for it back in February. But I don't SEC, and I don't know how it goes. So I wanted to wait to see what was going to kind of happen. I thought about kind of doing an update. I was going to do an update on Thursday, had the financials come out, and then on I think it was this Friday, maybe even Thursday, I get this little gem and just they had a new SEC filing this time for it, which is basically an extension. So when I see it pop up that Driven Brands, which is Carstar, Maaco, Fix Auto, that's three big brands in our industry, three big franchising brands, had filed for this other sort of extension, Form 8K with the SEC. I didn't know what that was, and so I'm on my phone when it comes across, and I go and Microsoft Gemini pops up on my phone, and I'm like, here's an article link. Here's what's going on. Explain it to me, because finances are not my you know it's not my strong suit, right? It's not like insurance claims. Like ask me a claims question, I'm right there, right? So this was the answer I got back, and I kind of looked at it and double taked it, and then sort of kind of laughed out loud. So when I asked Gemini to explain to me what this March 11th filing was, what did it mean, what does it mean for whatever, this was the answer that I got. Here's what it means in the context of the company's current death spiral of bad news. And I was like, wow, Microsoft, Gemini, has decided that Carstar, Maaco, Fixato, the whole Driven Brands thing is in a death spiral. I did get some text messages. So ATI, so the Automotive Training Institute, ATI, some of you may have ATI as a company you're working with, do your training. There's some really good people at ATI. ATI was bought by Driven Brands. I think they thought that it was going to be like the training center for them to work, not only just like work with franchises, but be able to put out training material and whatever. I'm not sure that it's ever fully developed the way they thought it was going to. And some of that is people, it's easy to acquire. It's very hard to integrate. There's a long history in this industry of people that go out and just acquire. Solera, Autotex was one of those. Tony would go out and buy businesses and never really figure out how to integrate them. And it just doesn't it seem to have come. But we know now, like ATI is on their third CEO in 3 months or whatever. Like I think somebody was texting me the one just quit like last week and he'd only been there a couple of weeks. So ATI was having its own issues and now Driven Brands is having their issues. But Death Spiral was like a really, really it's kind of, kind of harsh when you basically say that. So what does it mean? I'll just give you an update. Um, Basically, Driven Brands is trying to ward off sort of a run on the bank kind of scenario. A lot of people believe that publicly traded companies are more financial stable than they actually are. And so part of that is that they really, really are dependent on the debt. Um, so they do have a lot of debt. So to when they had to do the recall on their finances, they got a little worried about that. They haven't really unraveled everything that's wrong with those financials right now, and so because of that, it's making them have to put out this 8K, which is another thing. So basically, Citibank, they have all this debt that's out there in loans, and they're looking at it, and they want to make sure that Citibank or somebody doesn't call the notes too soon, that there isn't a run on them, that everybody feels like there's this crisis and they want to get their money back. Their debt equity ratio is 3.47. Not as bad as some other players in the industry, which we're actually going to get to a little bit later when we're looking at some things. but but this whole process was a massive legal exposure. So they're trying to ward off this banknote getting called in, and at the same time, um, they were trying to handle the barrage of lawsuits. So three different law firms announced class action lawsuits against Driven Brands over. It started Friday, so Thursday, Friday coming out. Three different firms. So there's a lot. There's a lot going on. The outlook, when you ask, so I went through and asked all the different AIs, hey, give me an outlook on this as a potential investment or a stockholder or whatever. Not a single one of them came back with anything positive to say. We don't really, I mean, like right now, all of them are kind of going, hey, we don't really know what's going on until we see the whole, till we see what the financial change is. So when they actually ever do finally give us the updated books, we're going to have an idea of what that is. But things are a little, all is not well in Denmark, right? We had a Shakespearean reference last week, so we'll make another Shakespearean reference today. But all is not well over in the Driven Brands death spiral of news. I guess I just didn't think it's not a sense of humor. That's probably not the right way, but to have that served back to me as a response to a question really kind of cracked me up. But let's talk about the dangers of those responses. Um, Occasionally, when I'm working on different things. Like I said, I'm not anti-AI. I don't like AI and estimating just because it misses so much. But I'll occasionally go to the AI and kind of ask some questions and look at some things. And I was in Gemini because it's on my phone. So that's mostly Google based typically. So Microsoft Gemini and feed in. And I was asking it sort of a series of questions about consolidation because that's where we're at with as the MSOs continue to do their launch and what they're doing. Then we have problems with now franchises are sort of falling apart. When we ask a franchise, why are you a franchise? It's like I want a DRPs. All right, so here's the interesting part. As I was asking it for questions, talking about challenges in the marketplace, particularly in the MSO consolidation game, number one, we asked him to compare of the big MSOs who's in the most financial trouble. Boyd Gerber's not out of it because just like Carstar, right? You're publicly traded, but you still have a lot of debt. However, their debt isn't as bad as what Crash Champions is. Now, when you was going through this, what was really interesting is they part of this that I decided not to show is that they're calling this a pivotal year for Crash Champions, and they need to prove that their luxury and EV line is actually going to make money. And I thought this is a terrible year to be trying to think about making money in the collision repair business, but okay. But anyway, here's what's interesting. While I'm asking Gemini questions, it starts trying to sell me a tool. So if you'll notice there on the screen, it starts cost of essential tech for 2026. So we're talking about survival. And I'm having a chat with Google over reduced claims, reduced rates, reduced payouts, like all of these things that are constraining the industry. And it's trying to sell me Alltel specifically. It's not like it's telling me and here's what it says: the cost of survival to avoid zombie status, which zombie status is you got too much debt, you're not making enough profit, you're barely churning, and you can't get out, and you're basically dead men walking. You just haven't filed for bankruptcy yet. The following equipment is now considered entry fee for complex repair, and it has Alltel, and it gives me links and it gives me pictures, right? And it's trying to tell me what to do. Here's the scary part about that. Number one, if you want to repair cars properly, Alltel's probably not what you need, right? I don't know, maybe the OE tool, maybe that would be smart, right? But what I want you to think about is that apparently, while consumers are using AI services, which they're gonna increase, those services are being they're becoming marketing channels. They're becoming revenue streams. I get into a battle here with the AI. Why are you talking to me about Alltel? Are you trying to sell Alltel? What is it? Whatever. And they would keep going. Well, it's a tool that you frequently use in repair. And one of my responses, well, I use a screwdriver more than I use a scan tool. Why aren't you trying to sell me a screwdriver? Apparently, you can argue with the AI as well as you can a person on Facebook. So that was kind of interesting. But obviously, this is advertising. So it's not like it said you should get a scan tool and listed three or four. It goes to immediate models. It shares pictures of those models. It gives you pricing of those models. If you click the hyperlinks, it'll take you to a place where you can order. What shops need to think about? your consumers are going to be searching in a marketplace after they have a wreck. They're going to be online going, maybe asking the AI, what am I supposed to do after I have a wreck? What are some things I should worry about? It's going to be really, really important that as shops, you work diligently to try to make sure that you have content that can become part of the AI, which means you may have to publish articles and you may have to do some things that become something that the AI can crawl. Because some of these late major brands are probably going to start becoming like Alltel here. Jim and I can tell me, no, we don't do paid advertising. You clearly do. So, um, on other parts, when you're doing a search in AI, you can, it'll give you an answer, and then there's a button, so that a little link, and it looks like a little link in a chain, and you can click it, and it'll show you the sources of where it went to get the information, which is kind of like you get to, like an appendix in a book, so to speak. You get to see the citations where things were. There was never that to click on any of this as Jim and I continued to push the Alltel tool. There was, I kept going, where's this coming from? Did they get an article? And that's one of the things that's most dangerous about our trade magazines, and something to start thinking about. I'd say a majority of what pops up in our trade magazines is not journalism. It's not like there's a reporter sitting at one of these trade magazines going, I should do a story this month. You have companies sending them stories. You think you're reading an article about a shop that's doing something really well. And then you realize you're reading an advertisement. I saw one pop up the other day, and it was a shop claiming that he had 108 estimates that he just couldn't get around to writing, and he was 3 months behind. And I'm like, bull, you're not. That doesn't happen. It was an advertisement for. And then I hired this AI company, and they came and wrote all my estimates the same day. I don't know a single shop that is 108 estimates behind in writing. I don't know a single shop that's more than a day behind in writing and estimates. But this story put out wanted you to believe that this body shop was 3 months behind, had 108 estimates that they hadn't written yet, and customers were waiting, and they had to get their information to. Um, so hopefully, that's not. We got to be really careful if the AI is going to pull from those advertorial type articles that are being put out there. We're going to have to work really hard to make sure there's other content. Now, it should be looking at market regional, which is what the AI is supposed to do in your searches. And to do that, specifically, if you push, they'll tell you how you can start training the AI to be more like you, and you push a button and says, okay, build my profile. I think most consumers are going to do that. And so then it's going to narrow those searches to your market. So you're going to want to make sure. It may mean that you need to have like blog pages on your website, somewhere where you can post articles about things, that when the AI goes out to crawl the web to try to find the answers, that it's there. We're working on a lot of book publishing, so a lot of people have been asking me lately, Kristen, why are you writing so many books? Twofold. One, when we surveyed and worked with a bunch of shops, a couple hundred shops over the last year and a half, everybody kind of said, I'd like a book, right? I'd like to hold something and touch it. I don't want to go on the internet and try to have to find it. So there's that. And then the other part is literature. Publications get more credit than just articles and things that are out there. So trying to make sure that there's other content out there to sort of like feed the AI and give it the answers it needs. But be careful, because when this started happening, everybody knows I don't like Alltel. I just don't. It's an OE tool. Like, I like OE tooling. I don't like copy tools or whatever. So for it to start feeding me that, the only thing in my mind was like, well, what if I'm Bob's Body Shop and I've got a customer online, and it starts feeding them to an MSO because they have the money to go pay for all this advertising that we don't do. So how do we combat that? So pay attention to what's going on. Just because you're not using AI in the shop, which it's terrible for estimating, um, doesn't mean that AI is not sort of affecting you and going to affect how your consumers feel about our industry. I started talking to a shop this past week over, should we, I always, when I'm trying to figure something out, there's a couple of Instagram accounts I follow that give you prompts. Like the better you prompt the AI, the better answer you get back. And I was going, should we come up with prompts? Like a list of prompts to put on the website to tell customers, use, if you want answers about collision repair, use this prompt to get the most, the best answers. Probably yes. That'll just add it to the project list. Melanie on my team is really good with AI. It may come to her. Let's talk about charging the customer. This one happens several times a week. Someone will go online and post they have a problem. And the first thing they always say is, don't tell me to charge the customer. I need a real answer or a whatever. Okay, that is the answer. Like I don't want to hurt your feelings, but there's a science here. So, why we say charge the customer? One, you can't control what an insurance company pays. You can't. There's a case to be made that you really don't have a legal action against the insurer. They're not your customer. They didn't sign your contract. They didn't do anything with you. There's an attorney online out of Pennsylvania. Ooh, I need more coffee. Hold on. Um, he kind of has a different feeling about it, and he's winning cases in PA. So, I'm gonna. But we never entered the insurer and the shop never entered a business deal together. So I don't know what you would file for. You could take a assignment of proceeds maybe, but absent of that, I don't think you have a claim. But anyway, so the indemnity principle. Here's what you need to know. We got a couple of concepts we're going to talk about today that are kind of interesting. An insurance policy is a contract of indemnity. It means you have a loss and it pays you for the loss. And the objective of the policy is to make the customer whole. So I want everybody to kind of hang on to that concept of being made whole. You hear it talked about a lot. We don't really talk about it in the policy, but the principles of the policy, the principles of case law, and everything is we want to get the customer back to where they were before the loss financially. There's been debate. I remember we had to change the policy a couple, like probably 30 years ago, to not say pre-accident condition because we were arguing over that in court whether aftermarket or used parts was pre-accident condition. So, but we want to make you whole. We want to get you back to that financial position. So here's the bad part. If you never charge the customer, it was never owed. And insurance companies are hyper aware of that and they use that to their advantage every day. So all of you have been posting lately, you're so mad at State Farm because it seems like they don't even care about their customers anymore. And they basically just make a statement, says charge the customer and hang up the phone because they know you're not going to. 99% of you are terrified at the concept of charging the customer for bills and things that they have incurred. If I never hand the bill to the customer and they never have to pay it, there was one, never a loss, and two, no indemnity is owed because there wasn't a loss. In other words, you didn't charge it, so you're reinforcing that the insurance company was right in not paying for it in the beginning. Once the customer actually pays for it, and I always put pays in air quotes, when the customer actually pays for it, we're not talking about a theoretical loss anymore. We're talking about the customer has actually incurred a loss. They have suffered a financial detriment. They have an out of pocket expense. They do not believe that they have been made whole in relation to the terms and agreements within their policy. Now, it's different than the policy clearly states we're only going to pay for a certain type of part, and you wanted all OE parts. Different, completely different than they didn't want to pay for the scans and the seatbelt test and the whatever. But once there's been a payment, it triggers this duty the insurance company owes. And basically is I have to pay all reasonable and necessary repairs absence of a policy limitation or a coverage limitation, right? Other than that, I have to be able to explain. Judges typically are not nice when you're trying to go in there and go, we just don't want to pay for seatbelt inspections and we don't want to do this and we won't want to do that. Those cases don't end well. A lot of you have broached that, or you've tipped your toe in that water. You charge the customer's gone to small claims court, and you send me an email says that, well, they settled, Kristen, before court. They called that day and said they were going to pay the claim. You cannot affect change in this industry until you start charging the customer, because if the market, your area, doesn't change, then there's nothing the insurance company owes. So you're writing these estimates, you're going to these classes, you're doing all the stuff, and then you're not following through with it. And so the insurance company is sitting in their office just laughing at you. and you're scrambling and I'm going to get a bill passed and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. Folks, I need you to understand that even if you get RTA bill, there's a lot of shops and states that have RTA that still aren't doing very well financially. So RTA, getting an RTA bill passed is not this miracle thing that's suddenly going to let you and your shop start making a ton of money. There is still going to be those times that you have to charge the customer. That's how this works, right? You have to have that financial detriment. There has to be that triggering event that changes the market. If I suddenly have customers in a market that are consistently having to come out of pocket to get their vehicles repaired, I now have something that the Department of Insurance needs to come and look at. Specifically, if your Unfair Claims Practices Act has language in it, so like the one here in Arkansas, it says the customer shouldn't have to pay anything other than their deductible. It's like it's actually in the Unfair Claims Practices Act. Um, that's why you charge the customer. Like that's the whole thing. An insurance company doesn't owe anything until there has actually the customer has actually paid it. If you go back, if we go back 50 years, that's the way claims used to work. Customer would go down, body shop, get the car fixed, get an invoice, pay for it, come back to their agent and go, hey, how to get my car fixed, write me a check. It was incurred. We only reimbursed you what you had spent. There was not this guessing game of what was going to happen. So we do it this way because it's easier. Customers don't have all the money to come up out of their pocket up front to get their car repaired. Um, I used to sit in claims and go, if we want to control loss costs, then just do that. Make customers get the car fixed first and then come to us with a bill. Um, but that's not how it works. So you're going to have to, there's a reason. There's a real, like a legal reason why you charge the customer. You can't affect change and you can't ask to be paid for something and you can't be mad that you're not getting paid for something if you're not charging for it. So at the end of the day, if you never charge the customer, well, then you didn't really need it, did you? Didn't need to be paid for it. You didn't need to have that done. The car didn't need it. If the car needed it, you wouldn't have not charged the customer. So be very, very careful. I completely understand the anxiety of angering the customer not having it, losing the business, and all those things. But there is a real, true reason around why we say charge the customer. So I want to hang on to that the whole concept of a customer being made whole. And I want to talk about claim committee. So I've been doing having these impromptu claim committees lately. And I was having a conversation last week about how much I missed them. I loved claim committee. Most adjusters were like, oh my God, please never let me have to take a file to claim committee. So what they were was if you were handling a file, one that was a double insured. So if both parties were insured. Those always went to claim committee because you wanted to make sure that each customer was being treated fairly. There was no bias in handling or any of that. You always had two handlers too on those, but you always went to claim committee on those. And then anything that was difficult, whether it was a difficult coverage decision, whatever. If we got stumped, so I'm working a file, and I walk back and I go to my claims manager, and we've gone over the policy. We've looked at around, we've done some research, we've maybe called in-house counsel and asked for some case law or whatever, and we think we know what we want to do. We wouldn't just go, okay, go for it, right? We knew that any decision we made could potentially have, cascading effects over the whole claims operation. So you called a claims committee. Now, claims committee had multiple claims managers in it, sometimes different disciplines. So you'd have BI, you'd have PD, you have whatever. And then let's say you had five claims managers on the panel. You'd pick a day, it'd be claim committee day. And if you were the adjuster, you had to come in and present your file. So you had to come in and sit down in front of a panel of, 3 to 5 different claims managers and present the file, the issue, and then what you thought the right resolution should be. Now, the book, so if you go read my book, Argue Like a Lawyer, Think Like a Judge, the principles in that book are from the claim committee days. It's humbling. You're working your own file and you're thinking you're the only one in it. You do a lot of things on the fly early on in your career because you think this isn't, what's going to happen here. And then later on, when you go to a claim committee, it's very humbling when you have to go in there. And if it ain't, we used to say, if it ain't in the file, it didn't happen. If it's not in the file, you can't say it. Because every time you say something, someone's going to ask you, where's the evidence for that? Where's the documentation for that, right? If you say, I talked to Miss Smith, where is the documentation that you talked to Miss Smith? How are you documenting you had her? So I learned a lot in claim committees. I love them. I wish more insurance companies did them. I get more calls these days on rogue claims managers. And I don't know if it's just that they feel like they're off on an island or because claims committees were something of the past and they've never done them. I always I've had a couple conversations lately with claim managers going, I think you probably ought to run that up the chain. Like, I mean, I'm not saying you can't do it. Obviously, you can do whatever you want to do, but you probably want to run that up the chain and get somebody else to get in the boat with you. I used to say somebody else gets in the boat, grabs a paddle, and starts paddling with you before you move forward with that. But claims committees are wonderful. So I just want to go through an issue. I get this issue all the time. Um, Basically, we've received a Department of Insurance complaint. So the customer files a Department of Insurance complaint. It comes into the claims office. We've got to respond. The customer is complaining about the amount of their settlement. So here's rule one. Same thing with a shop. I always tell you when a customer comes back to complain about the repair, they will typically come back and complain about one thing. Maybe they don't like the paint match. Maybe they don't like whatever. You want to stop and you want to review the whole car. Don't just try to handle the one little thing they've told you they don't like. Handle it as fast as you can and get it back in their hands. When it comes back, we stop everything and we look at everything. Same thing on a claim. When I get a DOI complaint, a lot of times a customer is articulating a frustration. So in the DOI, if you guys took advantage of the freebie from last week, it's not free anymore. But if you took advantage of the freebie from last week, I wrote a manual on filling out Department of Insurance complaints. It's like 40 something pages. And the thing that I talk in the book to the consumer is it cannot be about emotions. The Department of Insurance cannot act on behalf of your emotions. I can feel sorry for you. I can empathize with you, but that doesn't mean that I have any money for you. So you must be factual in your presentations. But I used to tell my adjusters when we get a DOI complaint in, we're reviewing the whole file because what the adjuster, or I'm sorry, what the customer is articulating in the complaint may not be actionable. It may sound whiny. I don't like the amount you're paying me. But if you just dismiss it and say, well, here's a copy of our ACV report and we paid blah, 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 you may miss an opportunity to cut something off that bites you in the butt when the customer gets really mad about the response they're about to get. So same thing with you shops, right? You they come in and they tell you they don't like the paint. You rush it around back, buff it, do whatever, and try to rush it back to them. And then that really wasn't what they were really upset about. So 3 days later, they're mad still. And instead of bringing it back to you a second time, they go and get a post repair inspection. Now you're buying a car where you probably could have like maybe even looked at it and went, "Oh, we need to buy this car." Like now that I'm looking at it, we really screwed it up. But you made the customer go down that, and that may mean they get a post repair inspection and it costs you more than the ACV of the car, or they may go and hire an attorney and it may get really ugly, like the Ohio case Larry was on. It was an $8,000 repair and it ended up costing the shop $105,000 by the time it was all over. So we're going to dig in. All right, the customer's upset. It's a 2024 Tesla, had front end damage that was determined to be a total loss. The shop presented total loss fees of an invoice for $12,346. The adjuster authorized payment and pickup of the vehicle. After possession was verified at the salvage yard, the adjuster then contacted the customer and offered a reduced settlement. So some of you are experiencing this a lot lately where the, um, the customer, one of two ways. The customer's told up front they're going to deduct the fees, or the customer's told after the vehicle's been picked up. The adjuster calls them and goes, okay, well, we disagreed with everything the shop charged, and so we're going to deduct those fees. They had determined on their own that $7,400 worth of the shop's fees were excessive and were subtracted from the ACV settlement. So when the customer calls me and says or files the DOI complaint that they're upset with the ACV settlement amount, a couple of things in play here. They may not like what the ACV of the car was, but they may be upset with the settlement amount because of this subtraction. So if I had like 5 grand disappear from my ACV, that would probably affect me too. So we're going to talk through this. First thing, I want to know what the policy says. So I'm always gonna the first thing out of my mouth, and it's a lot of you that have called me with a problem, the first thing I go is, have you read the policy? And they're like, no. And I'm like, well, if you want an insurance company to pay for something, you probably are to read the policy. You don't have any, you can't negotiate the policy. You can't act as an attorney, but you should probably read what's in there. You may be thinking you're owed something that you're not, or that the customer's owed something that they're not. So what does the policy say? When you read this policy, it basically says we owe fair market value. Conditions of payment, conditions of coverage, it says we owe fair market value. There's no sometimes in some policies you'll see some things about owing additional expenses, preservation. Those are the kind of things that we go, or towing recovery and kind of that. So what are the duties under the policy? This is the next thing I'll ask an adjuster typically is, explain to me your duties. And they'll look at me and go, what are you talking about? Well, the policy says what? Like that's our playbook. That's our Bible. Whatever the policy says is what we can do. So tell me what the policy says. What are conditions of payment? What are conditions of coverage? What am I allowed to deduct for? When we read this policy, you can take a betterment deduction that's in the policy, but that's pretty much all it says that I'm allowed to take deductions for under the terms of coverage for comp and collision. When I look at what are the duties, well, expenses that arise from a loss. So those are what we generally consider claim handling expenses. And those are pretty common. If I get in a wreck in the middle of the roadway and the car's not drivable and they call a tow truck and a tow truck comes and tows my vehicle from the accident scene, that's covered. I have paid a lot of unreasonable tow bills in my life. I've paid some $10,000, $11,000 tow bills on $500 cars. So we have a precedent that we pay towing, recovery, storage, we pay those bills. A lot of times we've paid more for that than the vehicle is worth. My duties are timely claim handling. I have to do that. And then I have to explain the loss settlement. So what that means is I don't just say it. So it's really interesting for some of these insurers, particularly State Farm right now, which I think that's why it's bothering me so much, is I know what State Farm's gotten sued for because it was me and I lost them. So I can't just say, oh, I think $7,400 is all that we owe out of their tow bill. Great, you have to explain that in detail, and you can't just say, well, here's my breakdown. I don't want to pay the 150 for admin at all. I don't want to pay the gate fee. I'll allow 5 days of storage, but not. That's not an explanation. That's you saying what you want to pay, but that's not explaining the coverage and the determination that you've made. Why do you think you don't owe those fees? The I don't want to, what I always call the toddler defense, I don't want to, isn't an explanation that I can give. The next thing we're going to make you do is go through what happened in the file. So the adjuster has to present the entire timeline. I can't imagine doing that now. I didn't mind it when it was my timeline and I was in control, but now you have 5, 10 different people in a file. And so if I had to be the one to walk it in a claim committee, I'm beholden to the notes in the timeline in the file from activities that weren't me, that I'm not in control of, which is probably why they stopped doing claims committee, but they really started doing them again. I'm going to look at the timeline of service. Like, so claim got reported, we did X, then X, what was service milestones? Planting the flag is what I call it in the class. What were my timelines of determination? So how long did it take me to decide this vehicle was a total? Did we do 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 supplements? Did we wait forever? What was there? Did we send any mitigation notices? So at any time, did we say we weren't going to pay for anything? Did we give any sort of heads up that the customer was going to have to eat X number of thousands of dollars of a bill? What investigation did you do to the fees? So if you determined that you didn't think the fees were owed, how? How did you show your work? That's what used to, adjusters would come in and try to tell me, like, estimates. We don't owe this. Show your work. like, I don't. Your opinion is worth nothing to me if the documentation doesn't back it up. And then when was this deduction disclosed? So the number one problem I'm finding out right now is typically the deduction is not being disclosed until after the vehicle has been removed from the body shop. It feels like bait and switch, and I know that's what it would feel like in a courtroom, because a lot of shops call me and go, Kristen, they called me, Copart, IA called me, they asked me for the charges. I told them, they sent somebody out here, they picked up the car. Now, 3 days later, after they picked it up, the customer's calling me and telling me they're mad because the insurance company said I charged too much and my fees were irrelevant. Um, But when did you disclose this decision? And how did you disclose this decision? Were you specific about the numbers and the amount? Do you think a customer would still probably let a car get picked up if they thought there was going to be this big, problem or whatever? Um, you can't use fees as leverage, and you can't use the settlement as leverage. You want to get in trouble with a DOI. Try leveraging a customer in any way, even on third party. We used to get in trouble on bodily injury claims because we would basically try to leverage rental to the settlement. And they were, well, if you don't settle your BI, we're going to kick you out of the rental. That didn't go well either. Like, you're not allowed to be a bully when you're in the insurance company. That doesn't work. And then the last thing that we always talk about are what are those implications for what you did in relation to Unfair Claims Practices Act, and then you have a duty of good faith and fair dealing. That's the hardest part about it being an adjuster. It's way harder on them than it is on the shop. there's more there's more standards, there's more expectations, there's more case law, there's more everything when you're the adjuster. So you have to work a little bit harder. So what does this look like from a claims committee perspective? Um, there's a lot wrong with deducting fees from customer settlements. There's a ton of exposure. I think about the Thornton versus State Farm case in Ohio. State Farm lost a lot of money for how they were handling salvage. And in that case, it was some, and it's true, and it's coming back to a little bit of owner retained problems. In states that have branded title laws, when an insurance company forces or allows owner retention, it could be seen as an avoidance of a title law. And that could be unfair. So you have these lawsuits that get filed by people that said, hey, I bought this car, I found it was a total, I got in an accident, I'm severely injured, or there's a death. So we go back to the death case in Florida in the last year and a half. I'm driving this car that I didn't know because the title wasn't branded. And when I started doing the history, I realized X number of insurance companies should have branded this car. So there's a lot around that. I get this letter, and here's what I want you to know. So I've underlined a little section there for this is a State Farm letter. State Farm has started sending these out the day a claim gets reported. All right, disclosure must be reasonable. And disclosure is not a shield. And that's the other thing that you learn all the time in court. So just because I send this letter out, it doesn't mean that I get to claim, well, I told you so, right? Now, I think that's what State Farm's trying to do with this, which because there's no reason to send this when they do, other than you want to punch somebody in the nose first. So this is not neighborly customer service here, State Farm. But this letter that they're sending out, if you'll notice, and underlined in red, at your request, State Farm will pay these uncovered charges and deduct them from your claim payment. All right, nobody requests that. But what I want you as shops to know, if an insurer is writing that in a letter and sending that out to customers, they are very aware of what the potential downside of this is. In like we call it a claim committee. But if you had attorneys looking at this process of you deducting fees, and there's a lot of other things wrong with the deducting fees. We'll go back to that made whole section that we talked about earlier. If they're putting it in a letter, somebody in corporate legal has went, well, we'll just put this in a letter, and then you need to make sure the file notes that it was at their request. Request and leveraged are two different things. So if you're holding settlement hostage, if you're holding a claim hostage, if you're telling customers this is the only thing that we're going to do, that's not paying it at their request. That's like holding a gun to their head and then them going, yeah, I'm okay if you shoot me, right? That doesn't, the invitation to get shot doesn't mean you're not going to get charges. In fact, that was the analogy when I used to discuss this in claim school. I used to teach claim school for years and years. I would basically say, look, if I bring two students up to the front, and I give one a gun, and I tell this one, go ahead and ask them to shoot you. And then they shoot, and I go, is that person still going to get charged with murder? And the class would typically go, well, yeah, shot a guy and killed him. But wait, he asked for it. He said, go ahead and shoot me. Is there anywhere in the law that says if the person asks, go ahead and shoot me, that it changes the way that we charge them? And the class would go, no. And I go, great. That's what you have to be careful of. sometimes customers will ask us for things that we simply cannot do. Like, I know they're asking, and I know that they think that's what they want, but we can't do that because we would still be guilty. And then this is one of those things where if I force you or leverage you to the point where as a consumer you feel like that there's no other answer that you can give, then that is not consent. That's actually the opposite of consent, and it's not seen very well. So I think just by putting this letter out and sending it out like right when the claim is filed, really dumb decision. You're already, it's like you're telling me that you're going to do something wrong. You're putting it on notice that we're going to do something wrong. Um, so things to look out for. I really think, and I've said it for the last 6 months, I really, really, really believe that it is important that every shop in this country starts to learn claims and claims processes, not because you're going to become a public adjuster and start, offering to represent customers, but you sort of need to understand what's going on, and then you need to know when something probably doesn't sound right or isn't exactly legal, maybe, so that you can kind of raise your hand and tell the customer you might want to talk to somebody, or you may want to call the state and ask them how they feel about these things. But it's going to be important. If you want to know more about this, so we got a webinar coming up on March 31st. The webinar is recorded, so if you can't be with us from 9:30 to 12:30 Central Time on that Wednesday, it's okay. When the class is over, you'll get the playback. What we're going to talk about in this class for 3 hours is the specifics around what's going wrong in total losses right now. So the people that are going, they're trying to force owner retention. They're saying they're not going to pay my fees. They're trying to abandon the car at my shop. They're trying to deduct the fees from the customer settlement. All the things that people are complaining about, we're going to go through those. And then I've written a total loss manual. So if you would like to be a part, I'll go back and I'll show you for those of you that are uh, watching along instead of listening along. That webinar is on the website, so you can go click and register and get online. If you don't want to do that, you can just email Melanie. She handles everything anyway. She's camping. I think she's off this week. So Melanie's gone camping. So it may take her a little bit to get to your email, but she will get to them. And then hopefully she's going to have some really cool camping stories for us when she comes back. But all right, I wrote a book. Now, I wrote the Argue Like a Lawyer, Think Like a Judge book because I realized I'd spent the last 5 or 6 years teaching negotiation classes. I negotiate once I have my argument. If no one's ever told you how to build an argument, then I can give you all the negotiation skills from here to China, and it's worthless because the argument is the key ingredient to negotiating. So I went back and said, okay, we're going to teach people how to build arguments, how to present them, how to do all that. And then I'll give you a negotiation class. Finished that and went right into total loss because a lot of total loss problems were the shop needing to determine what the proper argument was first. Now, if you go back and think about that claim committee scenario, the very first thing we always ask the adjuster is, tell me what's in the policy, tell me what's in your documentation. I want to see your timeline, how you got to things, and whatever. And so that holds true for the customer to be able to do a lot of things around the auto policy and how they're being reimbursed or indemnified. It requires documentation, and the source of that documentation is you. They need to supply some of their own, but for the most part, the shop is the source. The total loss manual is 320 pages. This it's taken me right about a month to write it. So I'm like, I can write, 300 pages in a month. That's pretty good. I'm feeling pretty good about that. I'm still editing it, by the way, so it will be ready by the March 31st the class when we have it. Editing and noodling it. When I first wrote it, it was long. Paragraphs were super long, and they were very claim school like, very technical, very whatever. I was like, I need to change the tone a little bit, and so I'm working through that. If you're watching the video, you can see, and I'm going to walk you through this. It is really, really detailed on the background onto the total loss, ACV, how it gets there, what constructive total losses are, understanding the laws that sort of govern your charges, how to research the laws in your state, So we'll give you some framework for what you should be doing to figure out there. We're going to go through contracts. We're going to go through your communication process, what that needs to look like. We're going to go through how you determine what you charge for. And then once you do that, how you defend it, how you get all that together. What are some of the insurance duties? What are some of your duties? What happens when the insurance company gets mad, whether that's abandonment, replevin, all of those different things? That's in the class. And then we get into a little bit about how you build your argument. And then chapter 14, as you see over there, is common problems. So we're going to go through in the book and work through these common problems. Now, the reason I wanted to do a book is twofold. The content is a lot for a class. Like to really teach you a good, solid total loss class, 2 days minimum, maybe three. And then you're not going to retain a lot of it. So you set through the class and you get to keep maybe 10 to 15%. And then it's not really easy to go back and replay a video. So for a lot of years, I was like, oh, you get the video, you'll have the replay, you'll be able to go back to it anytime you want to. And then that's not as easy as that sounds. But referencing a book is fairly easy. You can fold the corner down on a page. You can get a highlighter out. You can stick a post-it note on a page you like. I mean, you can really pick it up and reference it and touch it. You don't have to like go online and apparently ask Gemini, which may try to sell you an Autel scan tool while talking to you about total losses, but the books. So in the class, you're going to be able to get when the class is over, we'll give you a chance to buy the book. The book does not come with the class. I'm not writing 300 pages for $50 plus a 3 hour webinar, people. I mean, I'm reasonable, but I'm not cheap. So there's that. So, but we'll give you a chance to look at that. So I'm very proud of that. We have a bunch of books that are going to be coming out. So I'm pretty much dedicating this year to just writing body shop manuals, like real manuals you can hold and touch. Larry's writing a series of estimating manuals, which I'm very excited about. So we're going to get things that we can hopefully you can get in your hands, you can hand to other people. When a new hire comes in, you can give them some reading and studying material. Oh, it's early. I'm gonna get another drink of coffee. Hold on. All right, let's talk about everybody that's coming out of the woodwork. I've told you about this over and over. As soon as the economy gets bad, there's a lot of people that are going to come into the business and try to be your savior for whatever reason. They're going to have an estimating class that's going to save your day, or this one popped up. And I just sort of laughed out loud at this one. First of all, if you knew anything about collision repair and advertising a collision repair business, that would not be the background of your video that you would show. Has a green screen gone wrong? Well, actually, this is all AI generated. So, but anyway, so this garage agency wants to basically tell you that they can handle your marketing and your social media marketing and your online strategy and visibility and all of those things. And a lot of us, when we get really low and claims start to dry up and we don't have a lot of cars in the shop, we start thinking, "Oh, I need to advertise more." So they're hitting on a nerve, right? And if you're sitting at home and you're scrolling and this comes through and your shop's been struggling, you may go, "Oh, this is great." But you dig a little deeper. Okay, the people that want to help you with your online strategy and visibility has 8 followers. If you can't get several thousand people to follow you, why the hell would I even believe that you can do anything to help my business with my online strategy and visibility? You're clearly terrible at it with your own. But this is going to happen. You're going to have somebody pop up at some meeting, whether it's your body shop association meeting or whatever, and they're going to stand in front of you and they're going to claim to be an expert at whatever. And they're going to want your money. Just do your homework and make sure that there's a there's an ROI there. Like so, I'm going to be honest with you. Social media and marketing really not something you can outsource. You just can't. To outsource it to an agency that's going to do something is very expensive. I think you probably could build an AI bot to do much better. Yanni's building websites for like $300 right now for shops and redoing them that are high level SEO. It's not thousands of dollars. And it's definitely not this. Like I said, if you can't get 8 people, you have 8 people following you. You want body shops to give you money to work on their social media, their online strategy, their visibility, and you have 8 followers and 6 posts. Yeah, I'm out. That's like trying to get me to pay you to fix my car, and you've well, I've only done about 7 cars before you, so I haven't even done 10 cars yet. But you can trust me, I'm great at what I do. Like that just makes no sense to me, and it's ramping up. And this happened in 2007 and 2008, in the last big recession we went through. The market flooded with all of these people, social media experts. I remember there was a company called Collision Buzz, and they were going to do social media for shops, and you were going to pay X amount of fees. And there's you can't do that. You can't take on a bunch of shops, and you end up trying to replicate content, and then the algorithms just kill it. So um, don't fall for the scams. Let's talk about the Collision Collective. So thank you for everybody that jumped in. About 350 shops filled out the online, hey, I want more information, vetted through that, narrowed it down to kind of what the I guess the meat of this was going to be. Scott has had to step away for a little bit. Emmanuel is still working really hard on this. We've had a couple of meetings. He's met with several manufacturers that have signed on. So I can tell you that there are some manufacturers out there that are very excited at the concept of something that's working and focusing just on that independent collision repair, right? Now we're focusing on brands and products and whatever that are also independent American made companies, just like you. And so we've got right now 47 states represented, so it's a really good spread of it. Of that, 90% of the respondents said that they would change brands if they could get a better value. And so that's partly me. Emmanuel's out meeting with companies and getting companies to participate and jump on. My job will be going back through there and finding a value. So I spent last year telling everybody about Boslock from BASF, that it's considered a value brand, but it does everything that you need in the collision center. And so if it's going to handle the business, why would I pay more for something else, right? So my job is to find more things like that and make sure that there's things in there that can help you keep more money in your business and not lose any sort of like service or quality or whatever you got there. So we're not going to like just do a ton. Now, some of the bigger brands and things that well, they're meeting with Emmanuel too, but I really want to try to think about American manufacturers, these smaller companies that don't get a lot of attention, you don't hear about a lot. I mean, you guys hear about the 3Ms and you hear about the SEMs, you hear about those things because they can afford to buy advertising and do lots of things. But we're really sort of seeking out all those different companies. And then 95% of you responded that you feel your biggest challenge for 2026 is margin pressure and rising cost. And I think that's everybody. That's a real honest answer. Everything's getting more expensive. Your utilities, your materials, your labor, everything's more expensive. And it seems like everybody wants to pay less at the same time. And so those two things can't go together. So the Collision Collective is off and running. The stats were great. Paint and material monthly purchases, you guys represented $38 million, $15 million worth of rental, $150 million worth of parts purchasing, and $6 million worth of repair equipment. So, Select and some other companies, even on the equipment side, have jumped in and said, hey, how can we help too? Just really great stuff. If you are a manufacturer, and I've had a couple of jobbers reach out as well, but if you're a manufacturer and you're listening to this and you want to help small shops, you can shoot me an email. You can shoot Melanie an email. We'll get you in touch with Emmanuel and what he's doing with the Collision Collective. It's one of our missions. I always tell people, this is something I don't know how to do. I don't know how to set up a buying program and any of that. But that was a mission this year. It's fine. Let's figure out a way to help shops get some money back. Everybody wants to take money from you. Very little people want to give it back to you. They want to give money back to the MSOs and the big players in the market. But what can we do that gives money back to the little guy? None of us get to exist if the little guy doesn't exist. And that includes the Calibers and the Crash Champions and all over the world. Your model doesn't work if there's not other people paying to support the companies that you've been asking for these unreasonable discounts from. Like, you can't get 60% off your paint if there's nobody else to buy paint for more. Like they can, that's just, so if we lose all these independents, then they're going to come back to you and go, hey, we need to up your prices. And the deals that you guys have cut with insurance companies isn't going to let you do that. So we all need the independent to survive and make it through. All right, let's wrap this up and get everybody going out on their Monday. So, I've got Wisconsin coming up. I'll be there in April for 2 days teaching 3 classes. And I told you last week I will be at the WIN conference. So the WIN conference is the Women's Industry Network. I was an MIW in 2007. I think it was 2007. Yeah, that was so most influential women in collision. The MIW event and the WIN conference, they're really great conferences. I stopped going several years ago, not because I dislike WIN, it just doesn't fit in the schedule. Like going to conferences and stuff, I'm like I typically just get into arguments, and that leads to more bail money, and nobody wants that, right? But I will be in Tucson for the WIN conference. I am hosting a session or leading a panel discussion on Tuesday. So I'll be flying in on Monday night and then flying out Tuesday afternoon. But the founding women of WIN, so those group of women that originally got together in a room and said, let's start an association or let's start a meeting and call it, they're all coming back. And they're going to talk about the industry back then. So 20 years ago, what it was like when they started the Women's Industry Network, what they've watched from a distance. So a lot of them have been uninvolved for probably as long as I've been uninvolved. What they've noticed in the industry watching from a distance. And so I'm really super excited about that. That was, I think, I've often over the last years gotten a, hey, would you come to the WIN conference? Nope. Like it's just no offense. I just, it's not my cup of tea. I'm not coming or whatever. And then they called and they said, do you want to lead the panel for the founding members? And I was like, yeah, that I'm back for. That group of women, I hope they do some video coverage, and really, I think a lot of you, when we talk about history, right? Like, I've got 18 years worth of videos on YouTube. Collision Hub is 18 years old, and it just feels like I don't seem like that much time has passed. I guess that happens when you get older, time flies, right? Um, so many people entering this industry today, and I am so excited to see more women online doing their own YouTube channels or being influencers or whatever. But I think so many don't know how we got here. Like WIN is 20 years old, which in the grand scheme of things, you would think that there would be an older association that's just for women in the industry. But that group of founding women are incredibly diverse, incredibly influential, brilliant people from lots of different backgrounds, shop owners, um, paint companies. There's a lawyer that was part of the founding. And so I really hope WIN does a lot to reintroduce and let some of these new people to the table really get to know these people and understand what they did and how WIN. So I'm super excited. So you don't even have to be a woman in the industry, but if you happen to be a woman in the industry, and that's on, so WIN is insurance. It's people in the rental car business. It's people in the parts business. Like it's not just body shop people. That is one of the things that WIN does very well. Is there's a wide representation um, at the WIN conference, and so whatever job or industry that you are in that is part of this big soup called the collision repair industry, there is a place at the table for you at the WIN conference. So I'll be there shortly. Like I said, I'm coming in Sunday, like evening-ish, or so Monday evening-ish, and then I'll be leaving Tuesday afternoon when the panel discussion is over. I got to get back to book writing, so I can't really stay away too long. But join me at the WIN conference in Tucson, Arizona. That JW Marriott Resort is awesome. There's a pickleball tournament. So I don't know if you're into pickleball, um, but the WIN's having it. So they're not having a golf tournament. They're having a pickleball tournament, which I then asked them how much insurance that they had bought, because you get a bunch of people out there playing. I'm competitive and I'm not alone. So Gigi Walker, one of the founding people of WIN, she does heavy duty collision repair out in California. Gigi's probably as competitive as I am, and so I'm just thinking there's going to be injuries. We're gonna need to have a doctor on call. I don't know, but anyway, so a great resort and a great time had all. All right, It's going to be an interesting week. If you need anything, I know a lot of you probably have kids that are starting to be out on spring break. So if you need anything, holler. Melanie's camping. Shoot her an email. She'll get back to it when she comes back. If you have, I guess, anything that's an emergency that pops up, shoot it to Holly. So just Holly at collisionhub.com as well. And we will see you next Monday morning on Collision Coffee Talk. Thanks.